happening out on the West Coast in BC there. We've got Reid Small. He's been very prolifically reporting out there. Hey, Reid, how's it going?
It's going good. Thank you.
I appreciate you joining us today. You've got a lot of stories on the go. One Evised just popped up onto the site. Maybe we want to start there. What's going on?
The BC government just released its new climate, the Climate Preparedness and Adaptation Strategy, which is supported by more than $500 million, 513 to be exact. Most of that funding has already been announced over the last year, but they've released the strategy now to more or less show where it's going to be allocated, and that's going to be various actions to reduce the future impact of wildfire, flooding impacts. They mentioned the heat dome that supposedly killed more than 600 people last summer. We all remember the fall of 2021 when there was the Abbotsford Merritt, more than 45,000 people evacuated as a result of these weather events over the last year. And the new plan basically just it aims to tackle all of that, but it focuses on I guess what you could call anthropogenic climate change. So the idea that carbon emissions are impacting these weather events in some way. And so like, for example, last week, the federal government just announced it was going to give Lytton $77 million, most of which is going to go towards building net zero buildings. So there's a big focus from the province in agreement with the federal government on sort of these net zero policies to address wildfire, flooding, heat waves, that kind of thing.
Well, you guys are getting a good deal. I mean, with a province the size of BC, it's only $500 million. In Calgary alone, we're going at $87 billion with Gondek's plan here. So you guys really got to catch up on the climate change race.
Yeah, no kidding. It's there's a lot of people are raising concerns, particularly towards the wildfire situation. They're saying that there are more obvious things that can be done to prevent like things that happened in places like Lytton without this focus on the need to have X amount of zero emission vehicles by 2030 or something like that. People will focus on, they'll say, well, look at the forest management system. They'll say we're cutting down all this deciduous growth, which is naturally fire resistant. We're planting pine, which is highly flammable. And we're wondering why wildfires are getting worse each year. But there's been no addressing of anything regarding the forest management industry. It's all about anthropogenic climate change and the need to reduce carbon emissions.
Yeah, it's they're always hung up on that, but we'll just watch them continue. Hopefully we get some realism. And forest management, I talked about that last week. I mean, we got to get realistic, and there's a lot of people in forestry who are pointing that out, and they're trying to tell them that, but they're focused on climate change. So, I guess we got to see a little more burn yet. Let's see some other stuff you had going on. The BC Liberals have called on BC to suspend vaccine mandates.
Yeah, they are. They're suggesting that the province follows the federal government's lead by suspending vaccine mandates. They didn't say they wanted the vaccine mandates to end. They were very careful to repeatedly use the word suspend, much like the federal government. And so, Kevin Falcon, the BC Liberals have openly supported mandatory vaccination for healthcare workers, provincial workers in the past, but now that they're saying that those were supposed to be temporary and therefore it's time to lift them. And of course, people are kind of rolling their eyes and going, well, what did you expect to happen when you brought these in the first place? Did you really think that they were going to easily just let them go? But Kevin Falcon is now speaking out in contrast to his previous stance on the vaccine requirements.
Well, I guess suspend is getting closer to getting rid of, but everybody's covering their butts. It's unfortunate we can't see much courage politically that often, but take what we can get, I guess. Let's see what else we got in your story scroll. A crazy machete attack going on in Vancouver.
Yeah, that's actually the second machete attack to happen in East Vancouver. The last one was only 19 days ago. This one in particular, a police officer was waved over to the Empress Hotel on near Main and Hastings streets, and he saw a guy waving a machete around. That's why he was called over. And then, as it turned out, two people that were loading their luggage into a vehicle were just randomly and unexpectedly slashed by this guy with the machete. Both of them ended up in hospital with pretty serious injuries to the head and neck, but they're expected to make a full recovery. And the one that happened only 19 days prior to this one was also a man had to be hospitalized due to head and neck injuries. He was also stabbed in the back with the machete. And this was just one incident in Vancouver over the weekend. It was a particularly violent Father's Day weekend. We're still seeing an average of, according to the Vancouver police, 4 random assaults every day on average. And there was a few other stabbings. Someone was bear maced. Someone had an airsoft gun held to their face. Just a bunch of random things popping up here and there as far as violent crime goes.
So is this mostly gathered though, East Hastings, Kingsway, the areas we kind of anticipate this to happen, or is there issues kind of popping up all over the city?
It's all over the city. For example, there was the guy with the airsoft gun incident that was held to him. The guy was pretending it was a real gun. That happened, I believe it was near Stanley Park, like right by the seawall there in the West End, which is supposed to be, a nicer neighborhood. I lived in the West End for a while, and I remember after the first lockdown during that first wave, I remember going up to the Shoppers Drug Mart. It was around midnight, and you could just feel there was a different vibe. All the small businesses were closed, and just kind of some of the characters that were hanging around nearby, it just had a different vibe. And sure enough, the security guard at that Shoppers was stabbed about 20 minutes after I left that night. I remember reading the news the next day and being like, wow, I missed that by 20 minutes. And then the stats reflect that there's been more than a 7% increase in violent crime in Vancouver compared to pre-COVID levels.
Yeah, the world's getting a little crazy. I mean, a lot of it, without doubt, we're seeing in Calgary, as I was talking earlier about our transit system. And Linda Swobodian put out a story on how well decriminalization of drugs worked in Oregon. It sounds like they've had a 700% increase in overdoses. Unfortunately, we're just going to see a lot more mayhem until we can figure out how to get this addiction epidemic under control.
Yeah. Well, they as we all know, BC is going to be decriminalizing small amounts of drugs, personal possession under 2.5 grams. So we'll see how that plays out. I don't know how much of a difference it will really make because no one was getting arrested for small possession anyways. The whole idea is that it's supposed to just destigmatize it, the use, and I guess the theory is that will make people feel more comfortable to seek help and whatnot. If hopefully it doesn't end up like what's going on down in Oregon there. We'll see.
Yeah, the commenter June Marie saying, see Portland. Yeah, unfortunately, it's turned into a failure. I mean, again, we're looking for realistic solutions. If they'd done that in Portland a couple of years ago, holy cow, it was working like a charm, and they're getting people into treatment, and survival rates are going up. Hey, bring it on. Let's have it up here. But it seems to be a catastrophe. So I don't know. They don't seem to. Again, we're getting ideology blinding things from reality, I'm afraid.
Yeah, for sure. And it's I'm reading your Twitter timeline. It sounds like things are pretty bad in Calgary right now as well. A lot of drug use going on buses and sky trains and that kind of thing. So,
it's a different world, and I'm considerably older than you, but I mean, I remember, drug use was always around, but nothing like this, nothing at all. I mean, East Hastings, it always was kind of North America's heroin capital. And it was kind of noteworthy because it'd be like a 3-block area where you would kind of see that. and now it's across the country. It's every city is dealing with this. The new kid on the block there is that fentanyl. I mean, it's not that new, but getting out to the public and people hooked on it, and of course how horrifically dangerous it is for overdoses. Maybe I'll kind of segue that into a story there. I see Denise Martin saying, yeah, 2.5 grams of fentanyl is enough for 25,000 people, perhaps. Yeah, it's just crazy how powerful that stuff is.
She's
And
absolutely right. Yeah.
some BC fentanyl was tied to American Navy deaths.
Yeah, that was down in Georgia. In 2017, 2 U.S. Navy servicemen died of a drug overdose, and the packaging that was found was linked to a vendor called Canada One, which was a dark web drug selling vendor based out of North Vancouver, and so that led to a several year long investigation with RCMP and authorities in the U.S., and that led to the arrest of a North Vancouver man as well as a UK man that was living in North Vancouver at the time. These guys were shipping fentanyl out around the world, and they were ordering it in from Hungary and China, and then selling it through their vendor to whoever wanted to buy it. And unfortunately, 2 of those people were U.S. servicemen, and they died as a result of taking the fentanyl.
Yeah, so it's just awful stuff, and we're all tied together. It's integrated. As I was saying, such tiny amounts can be so potent. So I mean, it's difficult to stop the smuggling of it because a small package is pretty easy to hide and get across a border that big.
Yeah, and unfortunately too, in Vancouver, when someone dies of a drug overdose, users will, as one drug dealer put it when I was talking to him, a former drug dealer, will flock to the source because it indicates a strong supply. Obviously this isn't the case with, wealthier college kids that are partying, doing cocaine, that kind of thing. But the street users that are addicted to opioids, if they hear someone dies, they're going for that supply. It's really a sad situation.
Yeah, well, we get on something, I guess, a little more frustrating, but a little lighter. The BC Museum, that's a big issue we hear about in here now and then. I mean, on a couple of fronts. For one, the old museum apparently was too offensive to the woke, so they just had to tear it down. There was no fixing it. But the new one is going to cost a fortune, and it doesn't sound like BC citizens are all that thrilled with the idea.
Yeah. The majority of BC citizens, according to the Angus Reid poll, are opposed to that museum, which is going to cost, as most people know by now, nearly $800 million. So we'll see if they're going to proceed with it. It seems like the government will. And as we talked about last time, Kevin Falcon initially said he was going to scrap the plan if elected, but according to the timelines set forth in the business case for the museum, demolition will begin before the next provincial election. So it looks like it's going to go forward, regardless of whether British Columbians support it or not. They're going to be paying for it. And that's about that. Yeah.
I don't know. I mean, when they move with these things, they seems to work though, right? Ignore the people. It doesn't matter. They get upset, but election time, they get back in. So we'll see what happens. I guess I hope they stay somewhat within budget. These things rarely do, unfortunately.
Yeah. Well, they claim that the price of tearing it down and rebuilding is actually substantially more affordable than renovating the current museum, which also we have talked about before. So I won't get too deep into that, but I mean, there's a bunch of schools that need upgrading. This is kind of what people are pointing to. They're like, look, our healthcare system's broken. We've got schools that need to be seismically upgraded. Of course, the NDP government is saying that that's one of the main reasons that they want to rebuild the museum, is because that it's seismically unsafe. So, yeah.
Oh, we'll see what happens. Before I let you go, you got anything else coming up to look forward to in the news the next day or so?
Yeah, I'm going to be putting out a story later today on concerns of price gouging in at various gas stations in BC.
Okay, well, you guys are paying your share of prices as it goes out there. It'll be interesting to see the root of all that. We Don't
As
need
a truck driver, it's been a rough couple of months.
Yeah, well, it cuts right into your profit margin. All right. Well, thanks for coming in to check in with us today, Reid, and thanks for keeping up all that good news content out there in BC for us.
Right on. Thanks very much, Corey.